What would the Prophet ﷺ do if he was alive in this time? And like the Christians have, what would Jesus do? So we have the Muslim response to it, I guess, right? As if homosexuality didn't exist in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This is your brother Uthman reminding you, just in case you forgot. So if we look at homosexuality, it's been condemned in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, in the Quran, across the board. In the Old Testament, if you look at Leviticus 20 verse 13, you will find very clearly that if a man lays with another man, the verse is right there, their penalty is death. That's in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, clear. Somebody may ask, what about the New Testament? Well, in Romans 1 verses 27 through 32, same thing. Man, another man, what is their penalty? Death. It's in the Bible, New Testament. In the Quran, we have more verses than I could put on the screen. We have أَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهَا حِجَارَةً مِّن سِجِّيلٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we put upon them baked clay rocks that destroyed them. Because, why? Because of this action of homosexuality. So no doubt in the Quran, it's also proven that it's haram. Now if we go to the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because we get this question in a conference, what would the Prophet ﷺ doing if he was alive in this time? And like the Christians have, what would Jesus do? So we have the Muslim response to it, I guess, right? As if homosexuality didn't exist in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and he didn't say anything about it. So how would he deal with the situation? Well, let's just be clear. Homosexuality was there, and the Prophet ﷺ was very explicit about how he would deal with the situation. Rasulullah ﷺ, in the hadith that is reported in the Muslim, Imam Ahmad, I'm putting them on your screen, multiple rawayat, hasan rawayat, acceptable, authentic rawayat, where Rasulullah ﷺ said, لَعْنَ اللَّهُ مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلَ قَوْمِ لُوط. The curse of Allah is upon. In some of the hadith, it's mentioned in the sigha of dua. The Rasulullah is calling for the curse of Allah upon them, and others it's al-khabar, where it's also telling us that the curse of Allah is upon the people who do the action of the people of Lut, whoever engages in homosexuality, the curse of Allah is upon them. So how would the Prophet deal with this? Well, it's pretty clear, because he ﷺ told us what is our stance on homosexuality. Not just that, if we look at the consensus of the Muslim scholars. We're not talking about where, there's a Hanafi opinion and a Shafi'i opinion. La. Imam al-Dhahabi, in his amazing work called Al-Kaba'ir, about the major sins, I put a scan here for you to see. He says, there's a consensus, ijma'an of al-Muslimun, of the Muslims, and ghayrahum, and other than them, from Ahlul Milal, from the different nations, from the Christians and Jews, all of them are the consensus that the act of homosexuality is a major sin. So there is no disagreement. This is not an issue of some scholars take this opinion. No. All of the scholars are to a consensus, ijma', that homosexuality is haram. Now, people come with, well, what if you have homosexual thoughts? Well, having thoughts is not haram because you can't control them. That is totally understandable. That's why if we look at the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reported by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma in Bukhari and Muslim, he said if a Muslim intends a good deed, he will get one full reward even if he is unable to do it because of the intention. And if he does it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them, in one of the rawayat, 10 times to 700 times the reward. This is from the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if somebody intends to do a bad deed, now here we talk about maybe somebody has homosexual thoughts, they thought about doing this action, but they don't do it. They control themselves, then they will get a full good deed for this. So that tells you having homosexual thoughts or thoughts of bestiality or any other perversion, it is not a sin in itself, because some people's fitrah gets corrupted and so on, and they have these thoughts and they have to control their actions, and that is the nature of what's considered a sin. Sins are things you're tempted towards and you control yourself knowing that your Creator has forbidden that from you. So if somebody has those thoughts and they control themselves, they will get a reward. So anybody who is having that struggle, we can empathize and we can say, look, control your thoughts. Don't engage in that behavior. Just like if somebody has a really bad temper and wants to hurt people, we tell them, you may genetically have a bad temper, but you need to be able to control that. Now, when we talk about genetics, some people say, oh, well, people can't control it. It's just the way people are born. So again, even if somebody is born with that kind of a temptation, then they need to control it. Just like somebody's born with a likelihood of becoming an alcoholic or so on. Genetically, they're more susceptible to alcoholism, but that doesn't mean they should go ahead and get drunk and get in a car and drive and hit somebody and say, well, genetically I was more susceptible to it than others, so I shouldn't go to jail. No, you're still responsible for your actions. Secondly, many of the studies that have been published on this, and I work in the med device industry, I work in the scientific industry, I know, I've read them, they've been refuted. There is a article, I'm going to put a link in the description to a research peer-reviewed scientific journal entry by Dr. Robert Kinney. He's not Muslim. He has a doctorate from Purdue University. He has a master's in philosophy, concentration, bioethics. And he wrote this, and this is published by the National Institute of Health. It's not some right-wing newspaper somewhere or some Muslim publication. It's the National Institute of Health from .gov. And it shows that all of the research that's been put forward does not prove that there is a justification for homosexuality from a genetic perspective. Again, if people say, like, I can tell you which gene causes black eyes and blue eyes, which gene affects, what's the gay gene? Like, what gene makes you gay? There is no such thing. And he writes something, and I'm going to mention something from his summary. He says that one cannot conclude that human behavior is normal simply because it is more common than previously assumed. Otherwise, all human behaviors, including being a serial killer, can be considered normal. One cannot conclude that there is nothing unnatural about a behavior simply because it's observed in both humans and animals. Otherwise, cannibalism would be considered natural. Most importantly, one cannot conclude that a mental condition is not a disorder just because it does not result in maladjustment, distress, impairment in social functioning. Otherwise, many disorders would be labeled as such in error. So what does that tell you? That in fact, there is no scientific evidence that somebody is born where they have to be gay. This is not true. People are born with different inclinations, no doubt. There is nature and nurture. Either which way, you have to control it. So this is about your intent. Now when we talk about the action of homosexuality, carrying out the action, then no doubt by consensus, this is something that has been forbidden. It is from the kaba'ir, from the major sins of Islam. It does not make you kafir. Just the action that makes you a major sinner. It's haram, there's no doubt to it, but it doesn't take you outside the fold of Islam. What does take you outside the fold of Islam though, and this is a reminder to my Muslim brothers and sisters, is approving of such an act. As Ibn Kathir has mentioned, there is what's called kufr al-istihlal. When you become kafir because you make something which is haram, halal. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullah alayhi was asked about this and he clarified this issue. So if there is something that clearly in the Quran and Sahih Ahadith and the consensus of the Ummah that it is haram and you're like, it's okay, nothing wrong with it, this makes you a kafir. Not me saying this, this is what is established from the scholars of Islam. So I'd like to warn my brothers and sisters, be very careful. I know for political gain or because you want people's sympathy or whatever, you want to try to jump on this bandwagon that's kind of pushing with the LGBTQ stuff, but don't do it at the expense of your iman.